it's Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and today I'm going to be showing you step by step how you can paint yourself at home and a paint night at home, following along step by step this gorgeous landscape painting. This is a beautiful stream. It's got lots of lovely light in it, wonderful sunset colors. It's all the things you could want. To help me do that is my husband, John.
Hello.
He's going to make sure that you can see every part of this landscape painting as we break it down, as we cover everything. Now, there is a beginning part of this that we're going to be starting out that's a grisaille, and there's a couple of places, if you check the description below, that you can find that. So if you'd like to do the grisaille for yourself, you can follow along with that. That we also provide for you. We also have this in our new school organization, so definitely check the description down below for that, which also is where I hide things like the materials and the brushes and the colors that we're going to use.
Right.
In the description, you got to open them more. Or if that's hard to use, you can go by our website and find all of that stuff, right there on the video page for that. So you can find it at a couple of locations. You're also going to notice that my hair changes and my nails change through this because we filmed it in sections over a series of time. So don't be surprised if for a second I look different and then we go along and then I look different again. That's going to happen in this one. It's kind of an adventure. You don't even know. What will my nails be? What will my hair be? I don't know. It doesn't have anything to do with painting, but I will explain every part of this painting to you so you can paint along. I really like grisaille paintings. I think that they're a good way to start thinking about tonal value and how that impacts landscape, and I think that can help you a lot in your own painting. So I'm really glad to be sharing this technique with you. Nothing to do but get your paint, get your brushes, come back, and we're going to paint this together. So we're going to be starting this out with our sepia study on the canvas. Now, the resources to do this are going to be linked in the description down below. Of course, as per usual, the traceables on the website. I've got a link to the sepia study. If you're a patron, you got access to that complete explanation, all of that. And it's curated over at the school that we mentioned before. So if you don't like looking here and there and everywhere for things, it will be in a sequential curated area over there, which makes everything much easier to find. But you do want to begin with it here. And this value study is what's going to help this painting pop. When we begin with a value study like this, it helps us understand where our highlights and our depths are and helps us create more contrast and dynamic depth in a painting. This is called grisaille. This is kind of like a makeshift modern acrylic version of grisaille, but it is grisaille. And really what it's about is creating those values at the beginning. You see it a lot in oil paintings, but it does actually work in acrylic. How are you feeling, John? You ready to get into our grisaille landscape?
I think so.
I think everybody's really excited about this. So, deep breath. Oh, and if you have any trouble finding any of the things that I mentioned, you can just write us at support@theartsherpa.com and we'll drop the links to you because we know how the internet is. Sometimes it's hard to find things, which is why we're working on the school. Now, let's put up a step. We're going to go step 1. This is going to be time-stamped and chapter marked. It will go with the mini book as per the usual. I think I'm going to start with a round. This is a number 8 Raphael Artini round. And I've got my 8x8 surface with a grisaille on it. The only colors I'm using today are Mars Black, Ultramarine Blue, Quinacridone Magenta, Cad Red Medium, Cad Yellow Medium, and Phthalo Blue with Titanium White. So this is very much a color mixing course. And I'm going to begin by getting a little white onto my brush. Just kind of loading it up in a little smidge of my blue. And let's begin by painting in a little bit of the sky. I'm going to kind of go around here. I know I've got trees that will be coming up and lots of details and everything, but I want to get that blue worked in first. I don't normally do the thing where I paint around the trees and stuff, but I felt like for here, that would be super useful. Now, where I have rough edges like this, I can come back in and very lightly smooth them in. And you'll notice, even where I paint kind of around my trees, it's okay because they sort of show through. So I don't lose that composition. Which can be really hard, when you're trying to learn how to paint, especially in complex landscapes like this, is like You know, how do I get my composition to really track out?
Now, see, staying in the line seems like that would be important.
Well, I am going over a little bit, like I'm not painting them completely out, and I'm just getting that first layer of paint in. This is a little different than when we do the underpainting and then work it up. This is just a different way of doing this. Creates a different kind of landscape, but it's one everyone's really been asking me about how to do. So I thought we'd just kick off the new year with a little more of this going on. Now, as I come up, and go ahead and get into my ultramarine blue. This is just a light first layer. So I'm not that worried about it. Notice I'm working it around, just working it into the canvas. And it's okay that it's messy. It's completely okay that it's messy. It's messy layer 1. That was a Ready Player One joke. Notice that I'm just kind of working that in. This is almost a scumble. And I don't want a hard line, so I will blend these two transitions together, but I know I've got more layers coming, and that's going to create that natural transition anyways. Then softening it here, just playing around with it. Now, once I have that basis in, I'm going to rinse out my brush, wipe it off with a towel. I'm going to go ahead and dry my canvas and come back, and we will continue on the next step. So it's time to hit the next step. All right. Now, I'm going to be coming in and creating some of that dramatic kind of low lighting up to, you know, some of my more interesting sky lighting coming up. And I'm going to begin by taking a little bit of my cad red and my cad yellow together and getting a little orange going. Now, here's a trick. If I bring over a little ultramarine blue to that, it will darken it. It will gray it out. And sometimes on a nice sky like this, you're going to want that. I come here and begin to paint in a little bit of that sort of oranged out sky. I'm curving the brush, just working the toe. It's going to be a very soft kind of mix here. Grabbing a little bit of that. One thing I've got to watch for is my brush becoming overly wet. Notice how little blue, I mean, it's like barely, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just enough to keep it from being the brightest orange. I'll let that kind of peek through here. Wipe off, maybe get a little more of my yellow in there. Come in, add this into the blue and white mix I have over here. Start creating sort of that transitional light banding of the sky. Smidgy, smidgy. I'm creating is kind of that hazing. I want to haze.
Just a light hazing.
Just a little bit of hazing is what we want. I'm going to come in with a little of my blue and white. And you can see I can blend it into that hazing. Can always come back over into this and interestingly enough kind of work that in there. Like to create those soft transitions working through. Now up top, I'm very much going to really enjoy my ultramarine blue and a little bit of my phthalo blue. It can be kind of quite dark. I'll wipe off on my paper towel that's between my palette and my painting surface, just to offload pigment so I can kind of do a nice transitional blend. And then brushing that back. And really it's going to be a little more purple over here, so I'm in a pretty mellow space as it goes, rinsing out. A little yellow and white coming here. Just working that around. Just painting this in. Darkening the blue over here. Rinsing out. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to grab a little bit of my ultramarine blue and my quinacridone magenta, and I'm going to make a nice little purple here. Very lightly start working that up. This is just the beginning. Just the beginning. You might even consider getting a little more purple over here, just darkening this corner out. You can get a little more ultramarine blue into it.
Yeah.
Very relaxing. I like that very much. Not going to worry so much about drying it, but I'm going to call this a step. And I'm going to change out brushes so I can get a softer aspect to the sky. So, step 3. I'm going to switch to a number 12 Princeton round blender. I highly recommend this one. My favorite blending brushes, cloud brushes, bush brushes. It just does everything. I'm going to get it wet. And I might even get my little ultramarine blue over into this purple mix and start to darken over here. I'm just going to softly work it all together. Gonna rinse out. I'm getting some real depth to the sky now. And I'm gonna get a little blue loaded on my brush. I really want to make sure I don't have too much water. A little white. Just working that white in there, and you can see that the brush is just, it gives me such a nice soft aspect. I can always come right back up into ultramarine. And soften the transition between those two spaces. Bring a little white up there. I get my yellow into it, kind of work that in. I'll work carefully between these trees. Got to remember that I've got the second little tree kind of peeking out there. I'll rinse out for a second. Just continue on with value. Just working this cloud. You can see that the brush stroke is got lots of curves and randomness and playfulness to it. It's a really nice way to get here. I just rinsed out and wiped off. I'm going to just come right back and just making sure that there's a nice soft transition here. Now this is sort of dry over here, so when I brush this over, it's almost like a glaze. That's kind of a really nice effect. I'm going to go back into my red and yellow. Added some white into it. Kind of like a little haze here. Just highlighting. Maybe put a little bit out there. Just thinking about it. Now, if I go right into my purple, it's going to gray out a little bit because I have that orange in it. But I want it to be grayed out a little bit. It's kind of nice. Can always get right back into my ultramarine and my Quinn A little bit of white into that. I'm just going to work this sort of on the toe. A little more blue in there. Kind of a dark horizon going on. I like that a lot. I'm going to dry that, and we're going to call that a step and come back and hit the next layer of dramatic sky. Next step, take a deep breath, let it out. I'm getting a smaller brush. So this is a number 4 Raphael Artini brush, and it's just a little bit smaller. It's going to let me do some of my detail work. And I'm going to come in and get a little bit of my yellow mixed into my cad red, making kind of a very, very light yellow orange. I might even add a little white to it. And I'm going to come right here and start with little curled strokes coming back in. Maybe a little more orange even. Begin to create some drama.
Just a little drama.
Oh yeah, we need a little drama. I'm going to come around perhaps this little guy. I've added a little white and yellow. Creates some interesting little cloud-like effect, doesn't it? Just take your time, be at peace with it. Maybe a little more white as I work down here. It's important to make sure that your brush isn't opening up too much on you because you do want some control over it. Little white into the yellow. Nice about this is it creates a little bit of lining, you know, some silver lining to the whole thing.
Yeah, it really does.
I just kind of want that bit of fussy drama there, as you do. Get a little bit of my quinacridone and cad red. Interestingly enough, a little cad yellow here. Getting playful with it. So picking up color here and there. I'm trying to find interesting shapes always as I go. Kind of playing with those shapes. Grab a little bit of that white and yellow and bring it over here to the beach and just kind of create some depth to these clouds. I'm just shading them out. Rinse out. I'm going to take a little of my ultramarine blue and my quinacridone magenta. Make some purple. I'm going to get some cad red into that purple. Begin to create some transitional depth to the sky here. You just never know. Just playing with it. Back into some of that Quinn and ultramarine blue. Let's put some white here.
Yep.
Create kind of a creamier lavender. Little tone of dimensionality. I know I've got trees back here, so I've got to be careful not to do just the best work of my life where I'm going to stick trees. They're going to be covering stuff that, this is going to be peeking out of, but...
Yeah.
You can see this just creates some dimensionality here. It builds up. That dramatic sky.
So dramatic.
So dramatic. The sky is so dramatic. Again, a little bit of my quinacridone and ultramarine. Little cad red. A little white. I might take it a little more purple in there. I'm just kind of looking for a gray, stormy cloud. Letting blue peek through. It's important to let blue peek through. A little more dark ultramarine up into it. We'll be coming back with some wonderful highlights that pull all the form and shape, but I just want to begin by finding those like dark shadow values. Just putting some here towards the tip. I'm not putting this blue everywhere. I'm just putting it there, giving it that sense of drama.
Drama.
Quite gray there. That was the cad red, quin magenta, and a little ultramarine blue. Sometimes I like to get some of these stormier bits showing down through here. Total drama island here. But it is. It's really dramatic. I just rinsed out my brush and wiped it off. I'll take a little bit of my ultramarine blue and my phthalo blue together. Kind of thinking about the way that the sky is keyholing in. A little white and blue. And a smidge of yellow, taking it kind of into a very shocking turquoise. Aren't you shocked by that life value of turquoise?
Very nice color.
I find also like coming back sometimes in painting the spaces, between can help me also find the shapes in the sky. It's a nice back and forth dance. I'm going to get a little more kind of blue here. And work it back through. You can see that just then starts to become its own sort of drama. I like when painting takes my time and attention. I don't get to do like a ton of these like big time and attention pieces, because everything on YouTube tends to be fast, fast, fast. But I think it's nice to see how these come together, It's looking really good. Just a very playful sky. Now, I do want it dry before I even attempt the next layer, so I'm going to dry it. We'll still call it a new step, because I think every time I'm going to dry it and move on, we'll just be like, this is where we've got to hit that next zhuzh moment, and we're going to hit some details and highlights and shaping on these clouds. So let's get on to the next step. We need some details on these clouds. We need some highlights. We need some drama. I'm going to get back into my small hog round here, the number 4, and I'm going to start adding some little interesting fun highlights to the bottom of that. Now I've got my purple over here, and I'm going to add yellow to it because I initially want this to be grayed a little bit, and since purple and yellow are kind of contrasting colors, when you add yellow to purple, it desaturates it. And it will also help it feel like it's part of that cloud bank and give me some room to then hit with some bright values. I'm going to just come on the toe, making, gosh, just little, aren't those just delicate? Some just delicate little hits. I want a little more purple in it, so I just mix the yellow into more purple. Just catching the underside. Doesn't that create some drama?
It really does.
It does for me. I just love it so much. Maybe a little more purple mixed into that because these are a little further away. Look at those light up, take form, have floof. They have floof now.
Floof.
There's floof now. You see the floof? The floof is real. Back here is sort of a darker, you want more purple in the mix the further away we are from this area of the canvas. Come in there, just creating those forms, just creating those shapes. Kind of let that have a think there. Think about what it's done. I'm going to take a little of my ultramarine blue and some titanium white. Give some little wispy fur away. Kind of clouds maybe coming back this way. Those will be fun. Just barely touching the brush to the canvas. This is sometimes easier to do on a bigger canvas, but if you're painting all the time, big canvases can overwhelm your house real fast.
Yeah.
See me kind of working those there, just coming back in. They're subtle, but they're there, and I can even maybe get a little more highlight on. See how that just catches just a little more of it kind of coming in. A lot more yellow. Just touch the underneath of those, you know. Creating that pop of extra highlight. Just glowing up the underside. It's such a light touch to get that effect. Sometimes, you know, the biggest thing in your painting is figuring out how to lighten up your touch. It can be super hard to do. Just concentrating. Can you see those highlights just popping in?
Yeah, I think so.
I think they're going to like these highlights. I think they're going to really enjoy them. You are kidnapped into a long day.
No, it's kind of nice.
But I mean, this is a sky worthy of this dramatic, big landscape scene. I like that very much. It's doing pretty good. I'm going to rinse out a little bit. I'm going to get a little more maybe cad red, cad yellow. Come there a little bit. That is the hot highlight there. Just some on that cloud. Creating little values, and these little clouds down here is super fun too. Just making them as interesting as all the other clouds or everything else that's in this painting. That's the thing, is just making everything as interesting as it would be. Like that very, very much. Now I'm going to switch to this number 1 liner. I'm going to come in and kind of get a little yellow here and a little white. And I just tapped off any little excess water that might be going on. Just creating some like super intense highlights here.
I like that lining of the clouds. Makes them look like they've got like that electric glow edge.
I love the electric glow edge. Do very, 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 very much. Everything is just peachy. Gonna add some of it up there too. Just a little drama in the sky. Can have as much drama in the sky as we want, which is kind of nice. One of the fun parts of being an artist is you can have a gorgeous scene. Maybe it's got a very boring sky day.
You can add some stuff to it.
You can add some stuff. You're like, I'm an artist.
Add a little sparkle to the sky.
Yeah, I will sparkle the sky. Should have a little more yellow in there. Me just making sure my sky is as interesting as I want it to be.
It's a very interesting sky for sure.
I never know what you mean when you say it. Oh, it's interesting for sure. You've done a thing.
You've done a thing there. No, I like the glowiness.
Yeah, I do too. Just that feeling of the otherworldly. I'm going to get a little bit of white and blue together. Something a little lighter than what these had. And just kind of capture some of that over there. Try to make sure that these lines are regular and mimic those sort of shapes we expect to see in clouds. It looks pretty good. I'm not hating it. I'm not hating it. It's weird, but I'm not hating it. It's dramatic, but I'm not hating it. So I'm going to call that a step, and I think we're going to dry it. Okay, so we're on to the next step. Now that sky was a lot, but we're going to start moving forward into our landscape now, which I'm super excited about. I am going to begin this, I think, with a small hog brush, and then I'm going to add in my little Princeton Velvet Touch grainer. This is a 3/8 inch filbert grainer by Princeton in the Velvet Touch line. It's just a filbert that's pieced out, like, you know how we used to piece out our bangs, so they're all piecey. I'm going to load some Just Black kind of up into my brush here. And I'm going to begin to shape out my little pine shapes. And you're like, black, that seems extraordinarily deep. But in this kind of winter landscape, it would be very dark. We would have quite a deep depth to these little conifers that are here.
Yeah. The conifers.
The conifers. And this way I can get the overall kind of outline of some of this going, and then work it out some. I might add a little bit of bushery.
Some shrubbery?
Bushery.
Bushery?
Bushery.
All right.
Kind of pushing the stream, maybe pulling back that way. A little bushery. Little bushery. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Bushery. You can see I'm just tapping the brush up and down. Now, if my brush starts to widen out, I may have to like roll it just to get the tip back. And that's okay. Make sure that I've got the pines sort of together in this way. I like that quite a lot. And contrast is shocking, but I think that that's okay for what we're doing. Just tapping up and down. Sometimes you use the brush to help you acquire the shape. And that's a totally legitimate thing to do. To just utilize the brush to acquire the shape. I like the little thing because with these, you know, you kind of decide, are they upward branches, are they downward branches? You know, are they solid? Sometimes they have trunks that show through. It really just depends on where you are in the health of the forest. I'm very excited to be getting maybe back into some landscape painting where we work from like landscape source. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be really exciting. Not for John. Filming wise, that's a nightmare for John.
I like doing it.
It's bringing a lot of equipment and figuring out how to set it all up so it looks like our studio, but out in the wilds of somewhere. You know, not as easy. And I'm going to initially come along here and just kind of upward up. I know I'm going to be covering some of this with forward trees, but I still like to be in the habit of creating a dense background. Helps me think about the way things layer up together. I'm going to bring my dark line down here so I'm not having to fill in so much dense foliage. It's important to make sure that your tree line seems, well, irregular, not manicured. I'm going to tip this up a little bit, make sure my trees aren't leaning too much. Because sometimes when it's flat, you will lean the trees. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm getting just a better view on it. Remember I said don't do your best cloud you've ever done back there? That's why. That's why you don't want to do your best cloud of your life. Just working that through. And again, we have more of these that we're going to be putting through here, through the landscape as we build out that landscape. We're just getting these distant fellows worked in. Get that nice basis for some great contrast. Some great atmosphere. I'm going to rinse out a little bit. And I'm going to switch, I think, for this part to my filbert greener here, which is a really nice, the 3/8. And I'm going to get into my browns in an interesting way. I'm going to take my red over to my Mars black. You can see that gets me into kind of a nice brown. I can get to a brown from a green and a red and a black and a red. I've got actually a whole video about how to make browns.
See, that's the one color I don't seem to have a problem making.
Is that that's the one you've mastered?
Without trying, I can make a brown. It's like, just, try to mix green, I get brown. Try to mix yellow or orange. If I try to make orange, I get brown. If I try to mix green, get brown. Purple, get brown.
So this would be the easy part of the painting for you.
Yeah, definitely. I know all the ways to make brown. So
I'm bringing these leaves forward, this part of it, just so that, we see the shape of that. Pretty deep color right now. When we get the orange and going into it is when you'll get into the bright kind of rusty browns. That's okay to take a minute to find your tree.
Like Ents, they tend to wander away.
Well, at least Ent wives. Tapping up and down again. So this does a wonderful job at grass and all kinds of different sort of foliages. I do like it. Overall, it's just a brush just generally. I'm just pressing this down now into the filbert shape a little bit more, perhaps. Still pretty dark. I like these little sentinels on this landscape.
Yep.
Because they're like overseeing what's happening here.
As you say sentinel, it would be really awesome to add an iron giant there on the horizon.
Man, it would.
So, if you're an Iron Giant fan, you could go and do that on your own. You could also add like a Starship Enterprise cruising through there on the sky, or an X-Wing or TIE Fighter.
I think any of those choices are really super valid. Now, I can come back into my black.
Phone booth.
And I'm going to make sure that there's these deep little shaded areas. Because, again, it's in the contrast that I'm going to find a lot of this. So I don't want to lose my depth of contrast, especially down low here in the trees. Where I'm making sure they stay dark. And get into some red and black. So this is just a different way of going. Now, if you don't want to do the color mixing, you can just use the convenience colors. I'm going to just tap this up and down.
Now, see, that's another thing. I've totally picked up a tube of yellow paint, and it came out brown. See, I don't know how I did that.
I don't know how you did that when you never pick up a tube of paint. Oh, yeah, I'm out in your hair.
Oh.
John's actually quite busy.
I pick
you
up
make stuff
tubes
brown
of paint
because
all the
you just
time.
didn't balance the video.
Because I didn't color balance the image.
I'm going to come here and kind of make sure that these little foliages are happening here. Still quite dark. Still quite dark. Just creating a distant, irregular little foliage. And the brush just really lends itself to that. Tap that up and down. Let it find the little bush. It's going to find the bush. Now I'm going to take my red and yellow and make kind of an orange that I'll bring over here. You can see that brightens the mix up quite a lot. I might add a little more red into it. Really think about the inside edge of the tree there. See how that's just lightening it up and starts to shape the tree? A little bit on top of that bush. Just pulling in those little branches that we now see in bigger detail. Lighter on this side. Got some highlights over here. It's pretty great. And I don't mind that these sometimes take a minute to really find. That's okay with me. You know, we've got kind of this, neutral color. And what's nice about the neutrality of that is that really also informs that it's in a cooler time of the year, there's less growth. This one I'm a little more like just allow the little bristles to do their thing. Make sure that I'm paying attention to like the inside edges of these. And if you want to kind of focus a little forward tree, you just catch its little details amongst the forest. See how we're doing? Catching its little details. Bringing attention to those little branches. And maybe some of these distant things are not as defined as he is. And I haven't even played with, any of that here. I'm going to rinse out, so thoroughly. I'm going to take a little orange and yellow together and make quite a bright orange, yeah?
Yeah, I really like those trees.
Add quite a lot of yellow to it. Really create a light value. It should be a lighter value than that, which we do have. And just create that inside lighting. Just finding my inside lights, and I like that because you can really see them shape up. A little bit there. Maybe a little bit there. A little bit on that inside. Just pulls it forward, doesn't it? Just gives it some defined shape. Maybe a little more orange right here. Just peeking up. Maybe a little more orange, a little more red into it. Let's capture a little bit of light. See what we think of that? You know, kind of take that in, and then you've got your very, very orange light, and then add a little white to it even. That'll exaggerate things, won't it? Just exaggerating. Kind of very similar to what we did with the clouds, you know? You know, and the highlights being, you know, in between those the most of all. You know, which I think is kind of lovely. I'm going to grab a little bit of my black and brown. And just make sure that some of the shape, you know, holds up. Pulling each one from each other. Okay, let's call that a step, and when we come back, let's dry this and then come back, and it's a step. I am going to continue on in this next step, so we put up another step. I'm continue on in this next step on the number 4 Raphael Artini brush, and just sort of put in some of my distant, you know, landscape. I'm going to take a little of my brown over to my ultramarine blue and mix them together. It's going to give me kind of a gray. And I'm going to come back here. Start to put in the snow hard rock kind of embankments that are back here. I like coming in with a sort of dark color first, kind of filling in all that snow area. And then I'm going to build it up. Isn't that great how that makes such a good gray?
It is.
So, you know, normally we would say that burnt sienna and ultramarine blue makes a gray, but here you're seeing that just brown and ultramarine blue can make a gray. I'm going to add some dark, maybe kind of snowy embankment here.
It's said that there are many shades of gray.
It's true. It is said. It has been said.
I don't know that I could quite put a number on it. Some people, you know, they have a number. I think
I
there could
added
be
some
more.
more black to that. I'm going to just create some deep shadows back here where like maybe the objects or snowbanks and stuff begin to kind of shadow and pile down. And he is funny.
I don't know if I'm funny. I think I amuse myself sometimes.
Well, you know, you do have to watch paint dry, so everyone should be super sympathetic to that reality.
You know, puns and watching paint dry. That's what I've got.
That's what you've got. Now I'm adding a little more blue and white into it kind of to create. It's not a white. Well, you might sometimes think when you're painting snow that you would paint a white, but actually you paint almost, it's very rare that when painting snow that you get into the white of it.
Yellow's good.
Yellow does happen quite a lot in snow. More than even in humor. So just putting that sort of more blued, and quite blued around here. It doesn't mean I won't come back and, you know, hit things. Maybe I'll do some of this embankment as well. And then I'll definitely want to come here with a slightly more blue mix. Yeah, because we've got that in the distance. That's pretty good. I'll rinse out. Now, interestingly enough, I'm going to be back into my red and yellow and black for my oranges. I mean, for my browns. That'll be fun, kind of getting back into that brown. I may come back with some purple in a little bit. We'll see. Purple can be really nice in this type of space. Seeing where those little odd landscapey bits are. I might make that a bit of a rock coming in the distance. We'll see as we go. All right. Now, to go on, I really have to dry this layer so that I can layer on top of it. There's just no way around that. And since we're drying, I'm going to call it a step. We may have a lot of steps. But at least that lets you see where the areas are drying and what we're having to do in stages. So I'm going to start creating this landscape space in here in a little more detailed way. I am going to grab a synthetic round this time. This is a number 4 Simply Simmons synthetic round. Go ahead and get it wet. And I'm going to make my tree again. Hopefully, I'm going to make sure, I really want it to be straight. Not that trees don't ever lean in nature. They sort of super do.
They can have wobbles.
They can. I'm going to still tilt those so that I can really... And I'm still doing the tap though. See guys? Still tapping. This tree is just a little more in detail. It's a, you know, it's just a little more... A little more in detail. Just thinking about being something there. Maybe add some deep shadows for some rocks and stuff. You just never ever know. Come along here. Create some deep shadows. And then I think I'm going to bring some implied little treenlets sort of happening here, coming off and forward. You know, in that space. It's a... They're there. And when we do this in a landscape, when we have some of the landscape exiting, what that implies is that the world that we're painting exists beyond our canvas. That's why sometimes we let objects, go further off the canvas than you might think. So I'm going to get my number 4 hog back involved, and let's get a little more white over into our blue-gray. Make some snow highlights as you might have them, just a few. They're not everywhere. And again, it's so interesting how, like, you might think that snow would be white, and yet sometimes you find that it's almost anything but. Tap a little bit over here really lightly, just to show, that sort of personality. Kind of rinse out a bit. And then I'm, interestingly enough, going to get a little of my quinacridone and ultramarine blue together. Kind of makes a purple. And it's wild how you can play purple in a snowscape. To talk about some things. When we get some of the orange and stuff in here, it will do some fun stuff for us. Maybe a little purple here, coming up there, kind of creating little warm shadows. And continue on. I'm going to come over here and get maybe a little bit of my yellow into my, orange that I had, and maybe, interestingly enough, even some white. And let's start looking at this idea of maybe some sunlit being come into here. Just working that out a couple places. It's just finding those moments of light. I'm gonna kind of wash that out and roll that back up because, I think I need to temper that with a little bit of my blue. Just finding little bits of snow. Colorful snow. And the snow is colorful. I think that's what's important to note, is that the snow is colorful. I'm going to switch back to my number 4, Simply Simmons. I'm going to get into my oranges like we were before. Bring that over into the browns. The black to make the brown. That's what we're doing. Let's bring that orange to the black to make the brown. Add some little highlights to perhaps some of the rocks or some of the scape. And then just tapping down the tree again. You know, whether it's green on green or, you know, brown on brown, there's this sort of value study to landscape painting, because a lot of times you'll have a lot of the same hue or color in a space. So all you really have to talk about things is that value. That's how light or dark something is. See that we're just coming forward, creating those little moments. Kind of right there. Grab a little of my red and yellow. Not quite a bright orange, right? Kind of highlighting that tree and showing that light coming out on it. Almost getting up into yellow ochre now. Mix it into more yellow and going really into yellow ochre, and you can add some white into it. So it is like, yeah, I'm not using any yellow ochre, but I'm mixing a color that's like yellow ochre. Let's tap some highlights onto this little rock here. Getting those little forward bits. All right, we can always kind of come in with a little bit of blue and black. You know, creating those little contrasting moments that we like so much. Just pulling it along there and finding the shadows, and I'm maybe trying to exaggerate them. Tapping that up and down for the rough surface of that stone. Well, I think that's kind of a lot of fun, don't you? Kind of like going on back there. I love it. Let's straighten that out a bit so you can see that well.
Yeah.
All right, let's call that a step. I'm going to dry everything, but mostly because I don't want to drag paint through if I'm resting my hand through the painting as we move forward through the landscape. We'll come back and do another step. All right, let's throw up another step. Step 9, we're going to do fine. Let's put in some rocks. Let's talk about our rocks a little bit. What's wonderful about the rocks, I got to decide what brush I want to use on the rocks. Because, I want to give them harsh edges. I want them to be sharp. I think I'm going to use this number 4 filbert, this Isabey Isacryl filbert, because it'll give me a nice sharp edge. And I'm going to start with maybe a little bit of my black and ultramarine blue together, kind of into that Payne's gray. I'm going to come here and just start to think about the depth. The darkest part of the darkest part. Because that's really, there's such a dramatic light coming down the stream that it's really important to try to capture as much of that dramatic lighting as possible. And then the rocks catch bits of sun and then we see them pop out. Now the water will be probably equally dark, but will be bluer in hue. And you can see that value study really gives us a roadmap, doesn't it? To where we want to put these dark values. So we can paint these in more confidently. Just a way to go. It's not the only way. There are many good ways, right? This is not the only way. And interestingly enough, this may not be the darkest shadow. This is probably the third darkest or the second darkest shadow that we're going to have on rocks, because we'll take some of them to like a true black. Just pulling those stones across the stream. Black and blue. What's great is when we get to pull all these, kind of out from each other. I'm not going to do the rocks that are under the water. Those are going to be done with a very different hue. Those are going to be done more toned by the color of the water. Nope, I think that one's going to be under the water. All right, look at that.
Super nice.
See, that gives you just the start of that. Now, I'm going to come back in and, you kind of remember the deal. It's the red and yellow into black make brown, right? A lot more red on this one. I like putting the little different colors down. Starting to find the personality in the structures. You can see that starts to pull them out from each other. Just something to start with. Go back into my gray, right? Which, you know, I can do with my brown and blue and white or my black and blue and white, right? Some of this might be more in the blue. Rocks have a lot of color. And that's the thing when we're painting is like we've really got to think about like how the rocks it's already looking good. Hitting that roughness. Pretty good place to begin. All right, let's call this a step. We're going to dry everything and come back with an angle brush. Superpower tool. All right, let's head on with the next step. Step 10. Now I'm going to use a 1/4 inch angle brush. This is a Princeton Catalyst. It's got a nice, you know, sturdy edge. I'm going to be working my oranges, my browns, some brighter colors. It's definitely going to be, you know, getting into that space, right? So I'm going to bring some of my yellow orange up in here. And we're going to be playing with, you know, how we see these little rocks happening in the water. And I'm going to be, you know, different browns. Kind of bringing the highlights in. It's not too different from the snow. Generally, I'm just trying to find edges and values across the surfaces because rocks have lots of surfaces They're not smooth. They're
Yeah.
you know, they are eroded over time. Can using my brush in kind of rough aspects to pull different faces out. And I will be coming back through here, deepening values. I'm going to play those things back and forth until I have a very dramatic, colorful scape of rocks going through here that feel like they've got, you know, maybe a little light dancing on them. When I want to darken it, I can just get more into the black brown that I have mixed from earlier. More into the yellow where I want to perhaps brighten things up a bit. You know, and as I find these values, it doesn't mean I won't go back through and say, oh, I want this rock to be more blue, or I want this rock to be more orange. What I have definitely over the years come to determine about rocks is you just cannot put too much color on them, at least for my taste. I'm not saying that other people might not feel, you know, super differently, but I feel like for what I like to do, I like my rocks incredibly colorful, vibrant little creatures. Kind of rinse out a little bit. I'm going to come here and definitely do a little black and blue. Give these rocks some, like, see that shadow in that rock, like, really pops it. Can even get a little phthalo blue into that dark mix and like that. Add some colorful expression here, but that isn't bright. Just pulling this along here. Light touch. Or at least, you know, trying to make sure that I have a light touch. Come here and maybe have these little dark dashes. Those could be like stones later. And in between there. And you could see that it's just dancing those two things against each other. I definitely want to get any white out, and the reason is that it creates an unintentional highlight. And if I don't want to highlight,
draws your eye to it.
Yeah, it draws your eye to it. It makes it look like it's there. If it's not going to be somewhere that there's sunlight, I want to get rid of it. So that's why you see me continuing to create these like depth moments. Oh, I might go phthalo blue this time. It's just very strong aspect. You know, and I will have stones, you know, out into the river. So when the river comes through, that'll also help me. Find that space. Gonna come here and kind of add a little blue into this gray mixture. Maybe add some, you know, blue to that. Get some purple here. Pop a little purple. Purple is fun. Colorful, colorful rocks, right? Sort of dry brushing here. Just allowing that to be, you know, maybe a little purple. So colorful. This is what painting does that photography, you know, isn't inclined to do. You know, what makes it so enjoyable. Maybe a little more blue. get a little highlight into it. On some of the rocks that are, you know, a little highlighted, but maybe they're kind of cooler to the eye. Just a little bit. Okay. All right. Now we need to get super dramatic. So dramatic, John. Very dramatic.
Very nice.
So I'm going to take a little bit of my red and yellow, and they make kind of a wonderful orange. I'll just sort of use the brush to start to pick up a glow. Just playing that around.
I like how these rocks are coming together.
You like them rocks?
Yeah.
Them dark hills? These are stones, these ancient, old, and weary stones. I'm just catching that light coming down the waterway. A lot of yellow. Come over here and kind of make that maybe a little more ochre. And working through all these little colors that'll be here. We do need it to be lighter.
I like the highlights.
Yeah, we're putting the little highlights out. Just play with that. Maybe right there. Kind of catch that highlight there. Now some of these will pop more once the river starts running, because they'll have the contrast of the river to
Right.
exaggerate with. Just playing with, this lighter yellow ochre, the orange is here, dancing them back and forth across the rocks. I think in the paintings, the thing that was so challenging about the acrylic April wave in water was the rocks, not the waves in the water.
Right.
You were like, that's good till you got to rocks. Who knew? Who knew? I'm going to call this a step, and when we come back, we're going to do some little touches.
Do you need to dry this?
Yeah, let's try it.
Okay.
Let's try it. Continuing on, we want to add some, dazzle to everything. So I'm going to come here with my filbert grainer again, and I'm going to get some very, very bright yellow orange, right, kind of on the grainer. Tap up some kind of weird little glowy highlights. So they create some texture there. It's good, I think, to add some little flecked personality. Make sure my rocks have a little bit. I'm going to rinse out. I'm going to bring my white over to my blue just a little bit, but I want a very, very light color, light than what I've put out.
Those are just like sparkles.
Yeah, it's like these are little highlights that have, happened. They're by no means all we're doing. It's just that little bit of personality, texture. Now I'm going to switch to a #1 monogram liner. And I'm going to take a little bit of my white and my yellow together. And kind of piece out some of that highlight that's there. Yeah, I know I'm going to be coming around with water, but it isn't going to hurt me to have these worked in. It's okay because these are rocks to be fairly rough with the brush.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of being rough with it. Yeah, it's letting me do detail work, but I'm having to rough it up. Roughing up them rocks. Just roughing it up. Really like doing that. It's almost a dry brush. Isn't that wild how they come together? Okay. call that a step because I feel like we've got some nice river rocks.
Yeah, I think they turned out really nice.
I'm going to need another cup of coffee. So I look a little different than the last step you saw me. And that's an indicator that sometimes in a painting, you have to do that art over several days. Because of filming schedule and everything, I had a long break between getting back to this project, which means my palette couldn't hold because I've only got one stay wet palette, so I couldn't keep that palette permanently. These are the exact same color paint. It's the ultramarine, the quinacridone magenta, the cad red medium, the cad yellow medium, the phthalo blue, Mars black, and titanium white. And I'm back to the painting where I last left it. New hair, same shirt. I tried to give you some continuity. John and I have been talking all day about how to do this. And what I'm going to be doing in this step is I've had a second to look at everything, and John and I have been talking about it, and there are some highlights and contrasts that I want to exaggerate more. Sometimes when you power through a painting in a single sitting, it doesn't allow you to digest and process and let your little art brain noodle on something. When you have breaks in your painting, it can let you come back and push certain ideas and take things to that next level, which this is what this is about. So I'm going to come in through this layer and do that. That's what we're doing. And I think I'll start back at maybe the distant little sky here. And I'm going to use first, I'm going to get my number 4. I'm going to grab a little bit of my white and perhaps some of my yellow. So we just were talking about the different ways that we would be popping luminosity and creating more drama. So I am comfortable coming back and rethinking things that I'm doing pretty unabashedly, especially if I have time to go through and putting a little more yellow in there. So you'll notice I'm being very delicate with the brush. I don't want to take out all my good work. I just want to make this a little more noticeable for what it is. And I might take my quinacridone and my ultramarine blue again, which makes our purple. All right, and I'll go ahead and maybe get a little red into that purple. And even some white. So this feels a little warmer too. That this part of the sky is a little more lit up. So if you can, in your painting process, take some time, as you're going and look at things and say to yourself, what could I do here to raise or lower that contrast, the light and dark values? I'm getting just some white on here. Adding a little more of that keyhole lighting through this part of the sky.
Oh, that's so cool. Look, I love
how
the
we might
keyholing.
want to do that. Pull a little more yellow. So I can even take my detail brush here to make subtle changes that I need to make. And that just gives us a little more there. And if I come in and even get a little bit of my orange, which is just my cad red and my cad yellow. Come in and add some of this also to sort of exaggerate that cloud a bit. I like that very much. Now some other spaces that I was feeling I wanted some more depth. I'm going to come back with my red and my black. come here and just deepen this a bit. And then also we're going to be highlighting it a bit. Just little moments. Kind of creating some depth there. And because it's such a delicate area, you know, I'm definitely going to want to play with this little light. Just take your time in it. And I'm using a small brush just so I have a lot of control over what I'm doing. Just working this up here. How are you feeling today? So it's been a minute since we've come together.
Yeah. I'm just watching how the highlights are coming together on the tree. I really like it. Kind of interesting how after you talked about how after looking at this for a little while, you realized there were things you wanted to change on it.
Well, and I think that that's something that in our fast sort of YouTube world, we don't really get to do as much. Is sit back, examine, and digest, because the attention span of the feed is so short. You know, and then the amount of time most people want to put into an art project is in hours and hours and hours. Looking at it, come back and meeting days later. Not really a huge call for that sometimes. Coming back with a little bit of black. And just making sure that maybe some of this has some deep shadows. So we sometimes forget to play those as much as the highlights. But this gives us a little more drama. Against what we're seeing in the little sky here. Just hitting those bits I've been looking at. little bit of that dark contrast. And this also kind of helps define some of the tree too. So if you're a person who takes a minute to do a painting, there's just nothing wrong with that at all. And come here into my orange again. Maybe exaggerate some of that. Okay. So once we have the sky and the trees where we feel like there's a little more pop, I can come through and maybe take a little of the white and blue together, creating a little bit of a highlight on my number 4. Highlight maybe some of that landscape coming in. A little bit of that yellow orange into the white. And again, give some highlights there in that ground. I want to paint up my little rocks, so add a little sunlight from the sunset here, right? Mm-hmm. Can be kind of fun and wonderful. And I also feel like in my rocks, I want to just come up with, you know, maybe something, you know, a little lighter. So I'm going to come over here and make a very light orange. Lighten it with a little bit of white. Even lighter, I think. Give just that extra...
Yeah, highlight on the rocks here.
Yeah.
Looks really nice. Would you say keyholes the light a little?
Well, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to keyhole the light a little. Focus it coming. Sometimes I'll grab a little more yellow. A little more into the orange. I just... Pop those little moments. I'll grab a little white when I need it. Every layer you add to a rock just improves the rock, so...
It does. It makes them just a little more complex.
And this sort of lets these... We're capturing that little highlight. I'm really delicate with the brush. And again, we're just exaggerating what is coming down. I might get a little more into the yellow. It can even be a little orange. Just pulling it down through here. Kind of putting a little light on them, if you can see when I go right into the orange.
Yeah, it's really kind of nice how it makes that, captures that sort of golden light.
Not the whole rock, though. Now that I have that, I may come back with my detail. And kind of set those little hard edge highlights. We're delicate about it. So again, you sit with something, you look at it, and then maybe you'll be like, oh, I like you, but I think you need something more. Coming through here, and we're just exaggerating little dashes, little light lines.
Yeah.
And some of this will show better when the water is in. And we may put some of this back when the water's in, like as we come in and paint the water. And the light coming down the water. Look at those little popped highlights on those little river rocks. Aren't those fun?
Yeah.
You can see I'll come back through and I'll find little moments.
I like all the little highlights.
They just add to the corridor of the story. When the water comes in, those little highlights will probably even come back and exaggerate them, but we just want just wiggling a little bit here. Just a little bit of a story here. Okay, I think that's really good. When we come back, I'll show you what you do in the next step. So for me, I like landscapes for water features often. And I paint all the background. You know how like you eat like all the healthy bits and then you eat the fun bits at the last bit? For me, the fun bit is the stream. I'm going to take a little bit of my ultramarine blue and phthalo blue together. And I'm going to add some of my Quin Magenta to it to deepen it into more of an indigo. I'm going to come carefully. This is a number 4 filbert, and the reason I'm picking this is so that I get a nice crisp edge. And I'm going to start painting in the depth of the stream. Now, hopefully, I'm going to thin this with a little bit of water. When I come through here, it's kind of a, no, I want that back down. I don't want that covered out. That rock I want up. It's kind of a glaze. And then quite heavy at the center. And the reason I want it to be a glaze is I'm going to paint some little distinctive kind of river rocks. Isn't it great how you can like subtract paint and come back and be like, no. We'll re-highlight that one.
Nice.
And you can see where I have the dark Ari kind of under the stones. This helps me have the depth. I like to tuck the water really into the stones, into the edge of the bank. Just adding a little more depth there, darkening that up. I got to remember that I can't lean out too far. Kind of on my edge, and I'm letting the brush do the delicate work. And you see what I mean when I was like, I'm probably going to have to come back and highlight some of the stones. I'm going to kind of keep my brush strokes horizontal. It's early stages, but I think it'll just make everything easier later on. Come along that little embankment. Now I'm going to be highlighting down the middle of the stream. So I will be getting back to that. Love that shadow under that rock. It's a nice little deviation in there. Now the spaces are going to get kind of tight up here, and I may switch to my little 1/4 inch ankle brush so that I can paint in those spaces easily. And I really want my bank edges to be quite dark. I think I'm going to switch to, as soon as I get this just basis in, all right, because I do want this to be kind of up here. It will still be dark, but I want to be able to see those little stones sort of under the water. And I planned them fairly carefully. I don't want to lose that plan. But even if I did, I could put it back, right? Even if somehow I painted out my entire plan, I could put my plan back. Like, look, I'm going to put my rock back a little bit. See, so we just go right back and put our rocks back when we need to. And I'll highlight it in like a little bit. Going back. Maybe a little more purple in the water. We'll see as we go back. On my 1/4 inch angle. And that's just because this brush gives me some nice control. Really darken that up right through there. These little rocks that are peeking up in the light, I like them. I'll probably come back and, as I'm painting the river, exaggerate them again too. Isn't that a nice little shoreline that tucks in an intricate way through?
It's really interesting how that blue just breathes life into that stream.
Color does breathe life into a painting. It certainly does. You get that value going and you get that color going and you've got all the magic. And honestly, just doing this is fun. It's relaxing. Okay, so that's that first layer of getting the river in there that you kind of got to do. I think it's an important layer. I definitely want to dry it before I do anything else fairly thoroughly. I'm going to continue to darken these edges and kind of create this like corridor of light and sparkle up some of the stones, get my kind of distant underneath the water river stones in. And hopefully what happens is it just feels like the sunset is pouring down into the stream and lighting on, like almost firing and lighting up everything down the stream into this natural landscape. So when we come back, I'll show you what we do next. So I'm going to use my number 4 round, and I'm going to paint in some of my underneath boulders and some of this dark kind of detailing area up here, kind of working this in and through here. Just thinking about how this detail comes out. I'm going to take a little of my quinacridone and my ultramarine together, and they make such a lovely purple. And I'm going to come here, and sometimes I just like how a round brush kind of implies stones. So I'm going to begin with this. Fairly nice. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of my white. And just highlight these a little bit. These are just under the water, and so they do have highlights, like all of our rocks do, but they're just deeper, cooler highlights. It's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to come here with my little detail brush, as I have been, kind of adding a little lighter value.
Little highlights there, they look nice.
Yeah, just kind of exaggerate these a bit. Tapping up and down because they're, you know, they're rough creatures, stones. You know, even under the water. One of my favorite ways of doing this is with black and yellow, where the water is like super green. We did that on an acrylic paper once, and I really loved how it came out.
Oh yeah, I did.
I'm going to go right into my little orange here. exaggerate some of this. Even as I go. See, pulling that up, making that what? And then I'm going to take a little of my phthalo blue and ultramarine blue and some more of the quinacridone. And with my 1/4 inch brush, really come through where the depth of this is. Just playing with this. See, they're in there. They're just under. Such a light touch that I'm using. Just right under here, this has got a nice little shadow. See how that shadow comes around that rock, and that helps it really surface there and exist there. Okay, let's call that a step. Quite a fun step, right? We've got some very subtle under the river kind of rocks happening here. We're going to come through and dry it and start putting another layer of light down the water. Now, I think just generally this is going to go pretty fast from here compared to the rest of the painting because, well, it's just the frosting. It's just the fun. 15 is the fun. I'm going to take my phthalo blue and I'm going to mix in a smidge of my phthalo yellow. And it's going to make a blue-green color. And that's going to be our turquoise. And you want to see if it's turquoise, you can just pull out a little bit of white into it. And it will distinctly start to go turquoise. And I'm going to begin to come up here with my number 4 and kind of add a little bit of the turquoise to the stream. It's just the start of it. Not all the way to the edge, because we're going to keep coming back with our dark value. So we're going to keep playing those darks and lights in the stream. And I'm making short little brush strokes. Now I'm going to have oranges and yellows and all kinds of things in here, but I just really want to start to play this, the turquoise in the water. It is the orange and the turquoise and the sky in the water. That's actually, there's a lot of contrast to that. And so that really pulls interest for us. Now I can get more white and even yellow in there. Kind of just bring in some of these highlights. In this layering, if you have very, very thin paint that doesn't have a lot of coverage, this can be kind of annoying because it'll feel like it's just transparent, just transparent, just transparent. And if that's the case, you may have to go back where you want your bright highlights and pop some in again with white. Let's see, I'm just starting to pull this in. I still want to kind of keep the brush strokes. The stream isn't rolling any. It's like its roll is very subtle. So I don't need to, at this stage, create the angles for waves. I'm going to roll this out and just continue to pull this highlighted, water. I can always get to a smaller brush if it gets too difficult to work the area, but I think I'm pretty good. See how we're going through? Just coming across. A lot more white. Kind of pulling in some little ripples there. And rinse out a little bit. I'm going to want to dry this before I apply the next shadows or highlights. I think drawing between the layers here is going to be really important. So let's dry this. We'll come back and we'll put another step up just so you know that there are these drying stages between things. So I'm going to come back and inform some of the shoreline again, maybe add a few little shadowed ripples, and then come back into my highlights. I'm going to take a little of my ultramarine and my phthalo blue together, and I'm going to come here with my angle brush. And when we add highlights here, this will sort of give us like a wave or a ripple in our water. It's important to have some ripples in your water because the water does ripple. Grab a little bit of my earlier color. I'm going to come along the edge and kind of make it a little less even. Grabbing some of that there, because you want a little bit of ripple here too. So I'm coming on just the toe. Even here the shadow comes out a little bit, right, from that little rock. A little bit there. And even a little bit here. Let's come up along the riverbank. I'll get maybe into a darker turquoise. Go over the purple I had earlier. Again, keeping that sort of irregular. Pulling that out. Kind of working that there. That looks really good. Rinsing out. Now I'm going to come through here and start to be a little crazy and playful with the color. If everything is dry, it should go well. Let's begin with a little orange. Make little kind of short brush strokes. And I want to take out the turquoise that I put in. Little cad red, little cad yellow. Start to see that light come in. Maybe get a little magenta going over here. Kind of a surprising twist.
I like it.
Hmm?
I like it. I like the way the water has that sort of action, the water motion.
Yeah, I think it's important. The brush strokes are short and we have these hot spots that will be coming in with maybe a little more sunlight. The magenta is always interesting to me. Can't come in there. It's looking really good. I like kind of playing those back and forth for sure. Grab a little bit more of my yellow. There's some orange in it, but you know, there's just a bit more yellow. And sometimes I'll see a spot and I'll be like, oh, maybe a little. Just playing with those colors back and forth. Wipe off on my paper towel. Again, if your yellow isn't covering, you may need to go back and pre-paint it white, or you won't see it till we add a lot of white to the yellow. Could be another outcome that I'll highlight on the little ripples. Looking pretty good. So, okay, we're doing all right. I'm going to go back into my turquoise. Smidge of yellow into that turquoise. It's quite light. It's almost like the white reflection, but it isn't our whitest reflection. And a little bit of a pop there. Just hitting it as we go. Very delicate through here. Right, because we don't want to disturb the work that we've already done. See, I'm just touching the brush. It's not bad. Not hating it. I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of my quinacridone and my cad red together. They're sort of just wonderful as a color, I think, when they're mixed together. Kind of add that little luminosity. Where one can. This outer edge here. You know, it's a colorful river.
I like the colors that you add to it there. The little reds and stuff.
Just helps us see it. With our little artist eye. Little bits of ripples. Those go in there. Those look lovely. I'm going to wipe out and rinse out my brush, and I'm going to get some yellow and white together. Maybe exaggerate some of these, right? Just a little. I'm going to come bring it into the water. So kind of coming along that edge, giving it a glow. I am liking that. Pull a little bit there. A little orange. And I'm exaggerating that little bit of glow that you might need to. Just kind of pulling that down there. Just tapping up and down. Toe the brush. It's pretty delicate. Just capturing that. Are we starting to see the glitter?
Oh, yeah.
Is it now glittering water? So that's what we're trying to see, is the glittering water. Just adding more white into the mix. It just does start to sparkle, doesn't it? Whole reason you paint the thing. It's this moment right here. But it really is for me. Just a little touch. It's a delicate business.
I like all the little dancing on the water. It looks really cool.
Yeah, it is just like dancing on the water.
Yep.
And you just want to get certain amounts of it really concentrated, but you still want to see all the colors underneath. Which is what I'm working on right here. And I'm liking that very, very much. And then while my brush is still wet and everything is going, I can come back to my magenta and my ultramarine and my phthalo blue together. And make sure that those dark ripples remain dark. Those are as important, I think, as the highlights. So we're just putting some of those dark ripples in. It's really nice and dark there, which I like. I very much like. There's highlights in the understones, you know, it's a good time to catch them now. I'm super happy, actually.
I think this looks great.
I'm very, very happy with what I've got going on here. I think I want to glitter a little bit down, kind of, you know, a little bit more into the shadow with the different colors that I have. But I'm kind of getting there. And that's just about letting the path of light enter and exit. It's not our brightest light, but it does let some of that enter and exit into our stream, if that makes sense. See how it's just a little bit. That's just about finding balance in the symmetry of everything. Okay, I love it. I'm happy. I'm going to say I'm happy. I'm going to say I'm happy, John.
I like it. I think it turned out great.
Hopefully everybody liked this. I hope so. But more of it's coming, is what I'll say. And I really am not going to love signing this, actually, because I don't want to bring any attention to my signature. It's such a weird thing for me, like when I get a painting going that I really like.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do what I can do to be as minor as possible in the composition of it. Some artists are the opposite. Some artists just want their signature to just be big and red. You know? We're all different. We're all just different. And that's okay. All right. We completed it, John. You guys completed it. If you're here, you completed it with us.
Yeah.
When we come back, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do next. So that was a lot of fun. I know it was a big one. Remember, I have lessons that are short and easy, and I have lessons that maybe go into techniques deeper. So whatever it is that you're looking for, you can find it here. Be sure to hit that subscribe button because that's how you're going to get notifications. Be sure and go sign up at the website for the newsletter. You can check out upcoming classes on the calendar there or in the upcoming live list. But remember, this was like a premiere. So you just really want to get all the notifications, right? I hope you liked everything about this. I hope you like how it was organized. I really, really enjoyed my time with you. I really want you guys to be good to yourselves and be good to each other. And I'd like to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye.